25 weird facts about America. Every country is going to have, its quirks, its things that make it different. But America, because of the size of the country, because of how much has happened in America in a relatively short period of time, considering how old America is compared to, other countries, there's bound to be some really weird and really interesting little quirks about the country.
That there are literally millions of Mayflower descendants walking around the US today? Or how about the fact that Mustangs were imported? If not,
wow,
you've come to the right place. America's story can be messy, even chaotic. It began with a bold idea, self-rule, and in the process gave us the Wild West, the Great Depression, and near apocalypses. Misconceptions stick to us like gum on shoes, and our leaders, real or dreamed up, can be just as strange. This land of ours ain't always sunny, with earthquakes, floods, and the occasional tornado swirling around. But despite the craziness, it has its own charm. A wild ride, but a fun one. I'm Michael with List 25, and here are 25 weird facts about America.
Punchy intro. I like it.
25. Apple has more spending money than the US Treasury.
What?
We all know Apple is a giant among giants, but did you know that they could buy and run a country or two if they actually wanted to? Apple became the world's top public company in 2022, and then swiftly proceeded to become the most valuable company ever, with a total worth of $3 trillion. That amount came down again, because they are a public company after all, and the market is volatile. However, to put it into perspective, Apple's readily available cash for business operations, simply known as operating cash, is usually a couple of billion more than the entire US Treasury stockpile, which usually sits between $40 and $100 billion. That's not just rich, that's Smaug's whole hoard, including the Arkenstone rich, and then some. 24.
Yeah, Apple, the thing is, what do you even do with all that money? I don't know why they haven't come up with a car. They should get into the car business. Imagine I think with Tesla, Tesla's kind of losing a lot of its shine. An Apple car could work.
The air traffic is intense. While around 9,800 bald eagle pairs call the USA home, spotting them in the sky is rare. You're more likely to see planes. The FAA guides a whopping 45,000 flights daily, carrying millions of people and tons of cargo across 29 million square miles of US airspace. That's almost a fifth of the world's sky. So, although eagles grace our national symbol, it's airplanes that truly rule the American skies. 23. There's no official language. English is America's official language, right? Nope, that's a misconception. The United States doesn't have an official language. Although English is spoken by the vast majority of the people and dominates in many states, the federal government never designated it as such. Nearly 239 million Americans speak English, as well as 35 million Spanish speakers, and dozens of other languages uphold the country's cultural diversity.
But, the vast majority of Americans would consider English their first language, no?
22. The confidential code. Secret nuclear codes aren't the only type of secret code that the President of the United States has access to. With approximately 42,000 zip codes covering every corner of the country, the USA has one zip code that no one but the presidential family will ever know. The US Postal Service gives each new president a unique secret zip code to shield the first family from the tons and tons of mail they receive. This keeps important and personal messages from the public's prying eyes and adds a layer of much-needed privacy for the presidential family.
I see.
As such, while there are a disproportionate amount of zip codes all over the country, another unique one is hidden within the White House walls.
Very cool. The amount of secret stuff that the president gets access to, told, the president probably knows things that very few people will ever know in history.
1. You would need a couple of lifetimes to sleep in every bed in Las Vegas. Forget counting sheep. If you crave the night's rest in Nevada, Las Vegas can and will offer you the ultimate slumber party. Boasting over 151,000 hotel rooms, at last count, this flashy city could tuck you in a different bed every night for well, let's just say several lifetimes. So if you have 400 plus years available and would like to visit every room they have, then you better start now. Go. Let us know how it's going. Talk to me in 400 years.
Yeah, the Vegas Strip is just insane. Look at the amount of lights. Yeah, incredible place. That night I spent there was so much fun. I think you don't need more than 2 or 3 nighs though. I think any more than that, I might go crazy.
Let me know how it went. 20. The prison population is massive. The United States prides itself on being a world leader in every aspect. For example, being the world leader in jailing its own citizens. With a whopping 724 people locked up for every 100,000, it leaves countries like China in the dust at 118 per 100,000. This translates to a mind-boggling 2.2 million Americans behind bars.
Wow.
More than the entire population of Macedonia. But the problems don't stop there. Prisons are bursting at the seams, operating over 100% capacity. Even worse, over 21% haven't even been convicted of a crime.
That's nuts.
They're stuck in pretrial limbo because they can't afford bail. That means that more than 460,000 innocent people, presumed innocent until proven guilty, are locked up waiting for their day in court.
That's an interesting one, because I mean, if you've got that many people in prison, it kind of shows that prison isn't the deterrent to crime that we hope and think it is. You know, even if you're harshly sentencing criminals, the sheer amount of the prisoners, like in America, relative to other countries, shows that maybe the prison system, like maybe we need to modify it, because people, they're still committing the crimes. You know, they don't care, it seems, to go to prison.
19. Millions of Mayflower descendants exist today. The passengers of the Mayflower made history when they embarked on the perilous journey across the Atlantic to reach the New World. Setting sail in 1620 into the uncertain future, much of the U.S. owes its creation to the 102 passengers aboard that ship. Thus, it's only fitting that approximately 10 million Americans, and even 35 million people worldwide, can trace their ancestry back to these daring pioneers. Their fingerprints lay across the foundations of the USA, from presidents like John Adams to icons like Julia Child, Humphrey Bogart, and Norman Rockwell. The USA would be a very different country without their contributions. 18. Spirited Spirits. Calling all whiskey lovers, did you know America boasts its own unique spirit, born and bred right here? Yep, bourbon isn't just from Kentucky, it is Kentucky. Boasting over 2 million more bourbon barrels than residents, this amber wonderland distills a staggering 95% of the world's supply. It's so loved that it's been officially protected since 1964 to keep imitators at bay. So, if you're a fan, remember you're not just having a drink, you're savoring a taste of American heritage, born and bred in the heart of Kentucky. The only time I've been to Kentucky was to Mammoth Cave, which I recommend. That was fun.
I thought bourbon was from Scotland. I thought it's kind of similar to whiskey, isn't it? I thought it was of like a Scottish origin. You learn something new every day, eh?
17. We grow a lot of corn. America's farmlands pulsate with the kings of the crops, corn and wheat. Corn, the undisputed champion, takes the crown with a staggering 91.7 million acres planted in 2019. That's enough to carpet 69 million football fields. This golden giant fuels everything from breakfast cereal to livestock feed, making it the backbone of American agriculture. And our wheat isn't that far behind. First planted as a humble hobby in 1777, it now thrives in 42 states. In fact, the annual...
Wow, the size of this farm is just insane. Like, how many acres do you think we're looking at here?
harvest of the wheat state, Kansas if you weren't aware, could feed the world's more than 8 billion people for 2 weeks straight.
I mean,
16.
Would that be called a wheat farm? Or just a field of wheat?
Downtown Seattle was built right on top of the original city. You ever walked a city street and wondered what lies beneath? In Seattle, the answer is literally another city. A forgotten slice of the 19th century preserved 20 feet below the modern skyline. The Great Seattle Fire of 1889 wasn't just a disaster. It reshaped the city itself. To rebuild, streets were raised, burying the original downtown in what became known as the Seattle Underground. While you can visit the underground via tours, it isn't just a tourist trap. It's a tangible connection to a bygone era. 15.
Wow.
Never-ending reads. From a modest 6,487 books in 1800, the Library of Congress has grown into a bibliophile's paradise. Today, its shelves stretch an astounding 838 miles, housing over 39 million books and 167 million other items, including manuscripts, maps, music, and even old films, offering a comprehensive window into our history, culture, and ingenuity. Beyond the sheer numbers, however, the Library of Congress really is a unique repository of knowledge. From ancient scrolls to iconic first editions, every aisle holds the potential for discovery. And unlike the strict rules at, say, for instance, the Vatican, anyone 16 and older is welcome to use and peruse its collections.
That's awesome. I was about to ask whether you had to be, specially authorized to go in there, but the fact that anyone can go in there is brilliant.
14. The Fighting Yank. Have you ever wondered what comics were like in the heart of World War II? During World War II's darkest hour, our comic books were full of escapism and national unity, and featured titles like The Fighting Yank, which puts its readers directly into the conflict's heart, pitting the star-spangled hero against Nazi spies infiltrating a vital military base. While straightforward by modern standards, the narrative reflected the Fighting Yank's unwavering patriotism, steely resolve, and lightning-fast reflexes. Today, it's just one of our lesser-known historical artifacts. Aside from shedding light on wartime anxieties and comic book storytelling techniques of the Golden Age, it highlights one of the fictional heroes who kept hope alive. 13.
The Fighting Yank. Quite a cool name, eh?
Grizzly rules. You won't believe this, but there were actually no bear rules in place at our national parks until the late 1960s. Unfortunately, in Glacier National Park in 1967, two seemingly isolated grizzly encounters, miles apart but on the same day, shattered the illusion of tranquility. Overflowing campsites and trails littered with tempting candy wrappers had become unwittingly laid wildlife treasure hunts.
Look at the size of that big boy. Just, I used to think a gorilla could take out a grizzly. I think I may have to reevaluate that. It's just too big, isn't it? Just too big. What do you think? A silverback gorilla versus a grizzly bear? Who wins? I'd have to put it in favor of the grizzly.
Wildfires, displacing furry residents from their usual territory, further exacerbated the problem, and a necessary evolution was born. Safety measures akin to Indiana Jones field guides emerged. Strategic food storage. Bears have a weakness for leftovers. Clever camping tactics. Never pitch a tent in a grizzly condo, and crucial wildlife encounter protocols. Staring down a grizzly is decidedly not recommended. These rules and regulations have stayed in place and have brought us a long way since then. 12. Mustangs were imported. Galloping wild across the American West, Mustangs must be one of the US's most iconic symbols of freedom. Yet these wild horses hold a surprising secret. They're not native.
I'm guessing Italy. Where were they? Italy or Spain?
Descendants of Spanish explorers' horses, they made their way to the US in the 1600s, forming feral herds across the vast frontiers. Unfortunately, their habitat shrank as our settlements grew, and the rising pet food industry endangered the remaining wild herds. Public outcry eventually led to the Mustang Heritage Foundation in 2001, which saved nearly 10,000 Mustangs through adoption programs.
Awesome.
If you enjoyed our last fact, then stick around until the end of today's list, because we're going to touch on it.
It's a shame that, as humans have expanded across the land, we've taken more and more territory away from, wild animals. It'd be nice if we could just live, in some kind of perfect, sync. Do you know what I mean?
At least one doomsday prophet. 11. Women in space. If you think the most experienced astronaut is a man, well, you'd be wrong. In 2017, while commanding the International Space Station, astronaut Peggy Whitson defied expectations and soared past the American record for time spent in space. Clocking in at 1:27 a.m. EDT on April 24th, her cumulative orbital hours eclipsed the previous record set by Jeff Williams, 534 days, 4 years earlier. This wasn't Whitson's first space rodeo either. On this, her third cosmic journey, she extended a total of 4 records, proving that women are the queens of space. 10. Since we're on the subject of astronauts, from the moment NASA launched in 1958, Scouts have left their mark on space exploration. Of the 320 chosen astronauts and scientists, a whopping 181 wore the Scout badge. Of the 24 people to travel to the moon on the Apollo missions, 20 were Scouts.
It's insane that people think like that the moon landings were fake. I'm genuinely like asking this like from an open-minded position. If you believe that the moon landings were fake, like why? You know, based on what? Is there any evidence that, you know, you have that disputes all the, you know, the claims? Like, please let me know why. Because, yeah, I just don't think the US would fake that.
Including 11 of the 12 moonwalkers. But their story isn't one of just moonwalks and triumphs. Former Scouts have also featured in the missions marred by tragedy. 3 Apollo 1 astronauts, 4 Challenger heroes, and 5 Columbia crew members left this world doing what they love most. 9. A Civil War cannonball killed a man.
What?
In 2008. The American Civil War claimed another victim in 2008, this time in a driveway in Chester, Virginia, rather than on a battlefield. Sam White, a Civil War memorabilia collector, discovered an artillery shell and brought it home. The shell exploded in his driveway, killing him and leaving a chilling reminder that weapons of war can remain lethal long after the last drumbeat fades. The accident is a stark reminder of the thousands of unexploded ordnance, or UXO, remnants of past conflicts that are still silently waiting in fields and backyards around the world.
That's scary.
8.
To know that one of those, you know, could just go off at any moment. Like that picture just showed like loads of them. Because if one of those goes off, the rest will probably go off too, won't they?
At that time, one man tried to set up an independent nation in Florida. Have you ever heard of William Augustus Bowles? Well, in 1792, this eccentric figure was the leader of a very strange rebellion in Florida's frontier. The self-proclaimed Director General of the Muskogee Nation led a ragtag army of runaway slaves, Seminole allies, and even expats against Spanish rule. Once a British soldier, he used guerrilla tactics to disrupt trade and challenge Spanish authority, attracting bounties from all sides in the process. Bowles avoided the gallows several times, even once escaping from a Spanish prison in the Philippines, until he was handed over to Spanish authorities in 1803. He died in 1805 while still locked up at the Morro Castle in Havana, Cuba. 7.
Wow.
New York, New York. Think you're 1 in a million? Well, when it comes to New York City, you're actually 1 in 8 million. More people call this crazy concrete jungle home than 40 whole states. It's like a mini US crammed into one jam-packed city. And it's not just about the number of people that live there. Over 800 languages hum through its streets, with folks from all over the world bringing their flavors, accents, and stories.
Did he say 800? I didn't even know there were 800 languages on Earth. Wow. 800?
Brooklyn alone could be the country's 4th biggest city. And Queens, well, wouldn't be far behind. If you've never made the trip, put it on your bucket list. Everyone should visit New York at least once in their lifetime.
Yeah, it's an incredible
I haven't
place.
been yet. I was actually planning to go. I was planning to go for my birthday in May of 2020. And we all know how that worked out. Plans were canceled.
Yep, a lot.
6.
Crazy place, New York. So built up. Skyline is better than anywhere else I've seen. Anywhere else. The amount of skyscrapers, just wow.
The mobile historical landmarks. Move over, dusty statues. 2 national historic landmarks in America can actually move. Yep, among America's nearly 2,600 national historical landmarks, 2 defy convention. They're mobile. San Francisco's clanging cable cars and New Orleans' St. Charles streetcar, the oldest in the nation, aren't just exhibits, they're rolling, living, breathing pieces of history. 5. Americans are generous. We Americans might be a lot of things, but there's one thing we're not, and that's stingy. Some of us. According to a massive survey, 1.3 million people in 123 countries, led by the Charities Aid Foundation's World Giving Index, America snagged the top spot in global generosity for the decade. With nearly 60% of us donating last year, we also helped strangers, with 72% offering a helping hand and 42% volunteering. And it gets better. Our giving spirit soared during the pandemic, pushing our donations past 2019 levels in both 2020 and 2021. Our kindness cuts across lines, ages, backgrounds, and beliefs, giving me so much hope for the future. 4. Old Man River. Old Man River is a well-known showboat song, and America, as it happens, knows a thing or two when it comes to old rivers. Although its exact age is unknown, most scientists believe the New River is the oldest in North America. In fact, it might even be older than the continent of North America.
No way.
Born in the Appalachian Cradle near Blowing Rock, North Carolina, the New River is estimated to be between 10 and 360 million years old.
That's insane. So there's a good chance that dinosaurs, right, drank from that river, potentially.
And it holds the prestigious title of second oldest river in the world. While its age is certainly something to marvel at, this ancient watercourse has another peculiarity. It dances to a different rhythm than most, flowing northward, while most American rivers rush south. Although it's named the New River, and it's the second oldest in the world. Terrible name for it. Should probably rename it to the second oldest river. The not-so-new river. 3.
It's insane how a river can be older than the actual country or continent that the river is in. Don't you find that crazy?
3. The Great Disappointment. William Miller was an interesting man, though he's not best remembered for any of his achievements. Instead, he was the man who tried to predict the date of the return of Jesus Christ and failed. Based on his deep dive into the Bible, Miller had chosen October 22nd, 1844 as the second coming of Jesus Christ. The farmer-turned-prophet's predictions had convinced roughly 100,000 believers to gather across the Northeast as they waited with bated breath for Jesus to descend from the heavens as William predicted. Well, the crowds waited for hours. And as daylight faded and midnight drew closer, anticipation curdled into anxiety. However, as October 22nd faded to October 23rd, nothing came by except mild autumn weather. Dubbed the Great Disappointment, it shattered Miller's movement. Miller, shaken by his failures, stepped back from his claims and died a few years later.
Oh no.
The believers that remained in his movement were astray without their anchor and so fractured into smaller groups, eventually disbanding the movement. 2. The Hoover.
What made him so sure? What made him so sure that he knew when Jesus was coming back?
Dam. From the Transformers to the Rock San Andreas, the Hoover Dam has featured in just about every big movie over the past 20 years. However, Hoover Dam isn't just a big screen disaster waiting to happen. It's also a top tourist destination, and its sheer scale actually rivals the legendary Seven Wonders of the World. This behemoth, in fact, boasts more volume than the Great Pyramid of Giza, yet it took only a fraction of the manpower to build, 1/20th to be exact. It was also made of enough concrete to pave a 2-lane highway all the way from San Francisco to New York City, which is 2,565.68 miles, or 4,129.06 kilometers. I've actually been here, and if you've never been to the Hoover Dam, I highly recommend it. I loved going inside, looking at all the history. It's really cool.
Yeah, I'd love to do it. It's such a massive, feat of engineering. It's just huge.
Like I said, I was in Vegas. We actually drove on our way out to the Hoover Dam. 1. Being president isn't all that. You might think that being the most powerful person in the world is an enviable position filled with power and prestige, but the risks involved are a real concern. Yes, I know, it comes with a great annual salary, access to the best medical care, trips on Air Force One, and get to play with the nuclear football. If that isn't a power trip, then I don't know what is. However, there's one statistic that might make you reconsider. 4 out of 46 presidents, nearly 9%, were assassinated, which makes this position one of the most dangerous leadership assignments in the country.
It's a fair point.
All in all, it might be a better bet to take over Apple and buy your own country.
And the stress of the job, the stress, every decision that gets to you as president is something that multiple people have not been able to handle. That's why it's got all the way to you, and you're making those decisions like every single day.
Who wants to be the most powerful person in the world when you can sip daiquiris on your own beach in your own country forever? I'd sign up for that in a second. So, what's a weird fact about your country?
Great video. I mean, where do we even begin? Like, the one that sticks to my head, is the Hoover Dam. Like, it's just seeing how big it is. I really want to go and stand next to it and just look up. And considering when it was built, I think it was built in the 60s or something like that. You know, the fact that they could do that, how did they hold back all that water while they were building it? Like, so many questions. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.